Vice President's office debunks rumors of alleged presidential order to seek approvals for agencies overseen by the Vice President. It will now cost you money to deposit or withdraw your cash from your bank starting today. In international news, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Army General Gantz locked in a tight election too close to call. And in sports, Azizat Oshala is Falcons' new captain.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Vice President's office has dispelled a rumor that has been circulating that the Vice President allegedly did not follow due process in supervision of agencies of him, and that President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered that he seeks approval for their activities. In a statement on Tuesday, Vice Presidential Senior Media Aide Laolu Akonde said the report is false. He said agencies under the supervision of the Vice President have always complied with established rules where presidential approvals were needed. He said the rumors are misleading and are aimed at planting seeds of discord in the presidency while attempting to create unnecessary national hysteria. Akonde said the agencies in question are established by law, and the Vice President has always insisted on due compliance with enabling statutes and other established regulations. He said the Vice President has a statutory role as board chairman of some government agencies under his office, with appropriate approval limits. The senior media aide also said those approvals do not include contracts, as the Vice President does not approve contracts. He assures the country that President Yemi Osinbajo is committed to his service to the nation and will continue to do so. President Muhammadu Buhari has dissolved the Special Presidential Investigations Panel set up in 2017 by then-acting President Professor Yemi Osinbajo. The aim was to recover public property. Presidential media spokesman Femi Adesina said in a statement that the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice have been directed to immediately take over all outstanding investigations and other activities of the special panel. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, who was acting president at the time, established a special panel in August 2017 to investigate specifically mandated cases of corruption, abuse of office, and similar offenses by public officers. An African is once again president of the United Nations General Assembly. Nigeria's Tijani Mohamed Bande takes center stage at the United Nations this week as the 74th session of the UN General Assembly begins. Mohamed Bande will preside over the General Assembly for 1 year. The position rotates yearly among regional groupings of UN member states. The new General Assembly opened at the UN headquarters in New York City on Tuesday. Real action is reserved for next week at the UN headquarters when heads of states will take turns to address the General Assembly. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has commended the new UNGA president for prioritizing peace and security, poverty eradication, zero hunger, quality education, climate action, and inclusion, which he says are central to the Sustainable Development Agenda. A president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Paul Usoro, says the independence of the Nigerian judiciary is under threat in the Buhari administration. While speaking at an event marking the beginning of the 2019 judicial year in Abuja, Usoro says Buhari government is undermining that judicial independence. He accused the Buhari administration of alleged plot to teleguide the activities and decisions of the court. Usoro is facing trial on fraud allegations. He was a strong voice against the removal of former Chief Justice Walter Nohe. The NBA president said the independence of mind and thought by judges in the determination of matters before the court is under severe attack. He He accused the executive arm of government and government-held agencies of increasingly and unceasingly critical of the judiciary and its decisions, especially when they concern cases in which the government has an interest. Osoro said for a democracy to be successful, it must have a free judiciary. He said denigrating it could lead to anarchy. One person has been killed and 2 others have beaten death in the floods that followed heavy torrential rains that inundated Oka, Enugu State capital on Tuesday. More than 10 vehicles were swept away, some landing in drainage canals as a result of the early evening rainfall. A visitor to the city was reported to have been ended up in a drainage when he missed a step while crossing it. His body was later found where the torrent deposited him. At least 400 pupils were said to have been cut off from their school in Amobwa community. Just last week, 2 children were saved when heavy rain swept them into a gully. And finally, in this segment, it will now cost you to deposit or withdraw cash from your bank starting today. The central bank says bank customers making cash deposits or withdrawals will pay charges in line with its new policy. You may wonder why central bank would burden bank customers with additional charges. Well, the Apex Bank says it wants people to use less cash. Customers will pay a 3% processing fee for cash withdrawals and 2% for deposits above $500,000 naira for individual accounts. Businesses are not in the clear either. They will pay 5% processing fees for withdrawals and 3% for lodgements above 3 million naira. These charges will only apply in a few states: Lagos, Ogun State, Kano, Abia, Anambra, Rivers, and the Federal Capital Territory. Implementation of central bank's cashless policy will begin in March next year.
Coming up, African stories. Tunisia's 2 top presidential candidates heads to a runoff after tight election. And later, international news. Israeli election exit polls show neck-and-neck race. Results too close to call.
You are watching ANN.
Dear Mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place? But nobody answers me. Auntie Kemi just hugs me and says, go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. Tunisia's Independent Electoral Commission has confirmed the stunning victories of 2 political outsiders in the first round of presidential voting. The results are seen as a major rebirth of the post-revolution political establishment. Final results place law professor Kais Said and business tycoon Nabil Koroi in first and second place respectively. They captured more than 18% and 16% of the vote. They now face a runoff in what is Tunisia's second only free and democratic presidential election. Adnan Kawuchi reports.
Kais Said is leading the first round of the early presidential election with 18.4%, followed by Nabil Karoui with 15.6% of the votes.
Following the end of the first round of the early presidential election, within the legal period, the counting led to the following result. Because none of the candidates got more than 50%, the 2 candidates with the highest voting will take part in the second round.
Experts assert that the presidential election took part against the backdrop of a serious social and economic crisis in an atmosphere of rejection of the political elites.
This vote is a message to the ruling parties and the opposition. Tunisians are fed up and have voted for two outsiders because they are looking for change.
Many Tunisian and foreign observation missions noted that violations recorded during the election silence period and on election day were minor and could not influence the election results. They described the early presidential election as free, fair and transparent.
Our 3,000 observers have confirmed the data and results of the election authority. We did not record any important violations. The whole election process from the campaign to the vote counting was smooth and independent.
EASY members said that the election authority is able to hold the second round of the presidential election on the same day as the legislative polls, scheduled for October 6th. According to the board of the Independent Higher Authority for Elections, EASY operates in a climate of independence and is under no pressure from the government, the ruling parties or the opposition. The election authority adds that preliminary results show that two anti-system candidates, Nabil Al-Qarwi and Qais Said, are leading, and this reflects the independence of the authority.
Egypt and Ethiopia are still at loggerheads over the construction of Ethiopia's giant Renaissance Dam on the Nile. Egypt says Ethiopia has summarily rejected its plan for key aspects of operating the dam. Meanwhile, Egypt itself has dismissed Ethiopia's proposal as unfair and inequitable. Just some back and forth between the two countries. Those comments were in a note circulated to diplomats last week. Egypt thinks of the project as a threat to its existence as it gets at least 90% of its fresh water from the Nile. The note distributed by the Egyptian Foreign Ministry points to key differences over the annual flow of water that should be guaranteed to Egypt and how to manage flows during droughts. This note comes as Egypt, Ethiopia and the Sudan met earlier this week for their first talks in more than a year over the hydroelectric dam. The $4 billion Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam was announced in 2011 and is designed to be the centerpiece of Ethiopia's bid to become Africa's biggest power exporter, generating more than 6,000 megawatts. Female cancer patients in Senegal can now breathe a sigh of relief as the government says from next month it will provide women suffering from breast or cervical cancer free chemotherapy in public hospitals. For other types of cancers, the government says it will reimburse 60% of treatment costs. President of the Senegalese Anti-Cancer League, Dr. Fatma Gounan, says breast and cervical cancers are the most common types of cancer affecting women in the country. A World Health Organization medical officer says the measure will reduce mortality and help alleviate poverty. Dr. Barango Probe says other countries on the continent like Rwanda, Namibia and Seychelles already offer free chemotherapy. An estimated $1.5 billion have been allocated by the Senegalese government to this new measure. The government agreed in 2015 to cover at least one-third of the cost of treating all cancers. French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said in Khartoum on Monday the Sudan's transition authorities will receive 60 million euros of French aid to help the country rebuild relations with international lenders and tackle its foreign debt. Le Drian said his talks on Monday with his Sudanese counterpart focused on the new Sudanese government's priorities, including the top priority of fixing an economic crisis that triggered the protests that led to Bashar's overthrow. It said France would also lobby with European partners for the Sudan to be removed from the U.S. list of countries it considers state sponsors of terrorism. The listing dates back to Bashar's 3-decade rule, and it prevents the Sudan from receiving much-needed financial aid from international lenders.
When we return, international news. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Army General Gantz locked in a tight election too close to call. And later, sports. Zizat Oshala is Falcons' new captain.
watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now, some foreign stories. Vote counting is underway in Israel after millions voted in an election widely seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Exit polls show Netanyahu's Likud and centrist blue and white in a tie. Neither one has enough seats to form a majority. Netanyahu became Israel's longest-serving prime minister in July. He is now seeking a record fifth term in office and competing against his toughest challenger in years, former Army Chief Benny Gantz, leader of the centrist Blue and White Party. The first round of exit polls, which are unofficial figures, reveal Netanyahu and his right-wing coalition bloc have failed to secure the needed 61-seat majority. Official results will be announced on Wednesday, with final results due in a week. 48 persons, including soldiers and children, have been killed while dozens are wounded in two separate attacks in Afghanistan. One of the attacks happened at a campaign rally by President Ashraf Ghani. The other was in the capital, Kabul. In the first blast, a suicide bomber on a motorcycle targeted the Ghani's rally. There are fears the number of victims could rise. In a separate incident, another explosion went off near Kabul's Green Zone, where the Defense Ministry, U.S. Embassy and NATO headquarters are located. Taliban also claimed responsibility for the blast in the capital, saying it was also a suicide attack. Interior Ministry says 22 persons were killed and 38 wounded. The Taliban has warned its fighters will intensify their campaign against the Afghan government and foreign forces to dissuade people from voting in the late September vote, when Ghani will bid for a second 5-year term. Saudi Arabia has promised to produce material evidence and Iranian weapons to prove Iran's involvement in an unprecedented attack on its oil industry. Washington also believes the attack originated from Iran in a dangerous escalation of Middle East frictions. But Tehran again denied involvement in last weekend's attack on oil plants, including the world's biggest crude processing facility that initially knocked out half of Saudi production capability. Concrete evidence showing Iranian responsibility, if made public, could pressure Riyadh and Washington into a response, though both nations have stressed the need for caution. U.S. President Donald Trump says he does not want war and would not rush to retaliate. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has sold the building that housed its diplomatic mission in Istanbul. That is the building inside which Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was killed last year. The building, located in an upscale neighborhood, was sold more than a month ago to an undisclosed buyer for a third of its value. Reports say a new building for the consulate has already been purchased in the same neighborhood where the U.S. consulate is located. Turkish broadcaster TRT says Saudi authorities would have needed approval from Turkey's foreign ministry before proceeding with the property's sale. Turkish media reports suggested Khashoggi's remains, which have never been found, were dissolved in acid. But Al Jazeera sources say there was circumstantial evidence that suggests Khashoggi's remains were incinerated in the garden of the consulate's general residence, 300 meters from the consulates. A U.S. Vice President Mike Pence is refusing to meet the leader of the Solomon Islands to discuss development partnerships because the Pacific island has cut ties with Taiwan in favor of China. The Solomon Islands was the sixth country to switch allegiance to China since Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen took office in 2016. Self-ruled Taiwan has accused China of trying to meddle in its upcoming elections. Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare of the Solomon Islands has asked Pence in July for a meeting on the sidelines of the ongoing 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Pence and other officials in President Donald Trump's administration have criticized China for what they call debt trap lending practices to small countries, pushing them into debt. China has denied the charges.
Up next, sport. Aziza Toshola emerges Falcons' new captain. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to sport. Barcelona striker Aziza Toshola is now the new captain of the Super Falcons. Oshola replaces Desire Okmarunozie, who led the team at the 2019 Women's World Cup in June to reach the knockout stage for the first time in 2 decades. The change was announced on Tuesday by Falcons acting coach Christopher Danjuma. NFF spokesperson Ademola Olajire also confirmed Oshola's appointment. Brazil have confirmed they will face Senegal and Nigeria in October in Singapore. It will be the first ever meeting between Brazil and Senegal, who lost the Africa Cup of Nations final to Algeria and are the continent's top-ranked side. Nigeria will meet Brazil for the second time at the senior level following a 3-0 defeat in a friendly in June 2003 in Abuja. The friendlies are in line with Brazil's wishes to play 50 top-ranked teams. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.